We're here with Ian Bremmer. Ian is the head and founder of the Eurasia Group. Ian has written a new book, Every Nation for Itself, The Rise of the G0. Ian, thanks for joining us.
Very happy to be with you.
What is the G0?
G0 is a world order where you have no global leadership. You've heard of the G7, the G8, the G20, but as of today, the United States is not prepared to bail out the Europeans. They're not going to remove Assad from power in Syria. They're not going to bomb Iran. The Israelis might, but we're not. We're leaving Afghanistan. But no one else is going to step into that role. That is what I call the G0, and it's a very different world order than the ones that we've lived in since World War II.
And how did we get here? I mean, what brought about this collapse of these institutions that have guided us for so long?
Well, on the one hand, it's happened over a long period of time. On the other hand, it happened very quickly. The long period of time is after World War II, the United States created a global architecture. We led globalization, right, with the United Nations and the World Bank and the IMF and the Bretton Woods Accord. We got all of our allies together. We used our money to build up the Europeans and the Japanese. That was the world order. But for the last 30 years, there's been this underlying shift in the balance of power from the United States towards China, from the developed world towards the developing world, and from debtor economies towards creditor economies. And so you're seeing the shift in the balance of power, yet the architecture, the leadership is still all about the United States and its allies. So clearly at some point that's going to break, and it takes a shock to break it. And that shock, the one that was big enough to really bring down the notion that we were going to have a world that was led by the United States, was the 2008 financial crisis. Now, we've been really busy and distracted with the aftermath of the financial crisis for the last few years, but now that we're sort of standing up again and looking around the landscape, we understand that the real issue is we don't have the global order that we're used to. We don't have any global leadership, and that's how we got to the G0.
I think a lot of people might have a tendency to look at your book or others like it as, oh, it's just another decline of the U.S., rise of China. But that's not really what you're saying, is it?
It's very sharply not what I'm saying. This is not about U.S. decline. I mean, let me be clear. Whether or not you happen to have the view that the U.S. is in decline, we would not be bailing out Europe, right? The idea of a Marshall Plan is completely alien to anyone that is remotely electable across the political spectrum in the United States.
For it,
no, it's not. If we wanted to, we could, but no one would support it. I mean, you just saw Obama in Afghanistan meeting with President/Mayor Karzai, signing a deal to get us out of there. We could stay, but no one in America wants us to, not the Democrats, not the Republicans. So the point is we're not going to do this stuff. But that doesn't mean we're in decline. In fact, to the extent that we're not going to do the lifting, there's much more of a problem for other countries than us. I mean, look, 36% of the oil in the world goes through a little place called the Straits of Hormuz, and the Iranians have threatened to shut it down. Now, the Chinese want us to do something about that. But frankly, if we don't, it's a much bigger problem for China. Imports a lot more oil from the Middle East, and their system is much more unstable than it is for the United States. So the point is, it's not about whether the U.S. is or isn't in decline. It's about, given that you're not going to see global leadership from the U.S. or anyone else, how do different countries fare? And in that environment, the U.S. fares a lot better than almost anyone else out there.
I know your book outlines some of the strengths that the U.S. has going forward. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I mean, first of all, in a G0 world, you have a lot more risk. You have a lot more volatility. And when you're in a world that's dangerous, you don't just look for growth and return on your money. You also look to make sure that your money is still there. You want safety. You want resilience. Well, the United States is enormously resilient. You have Occupy Wall Street, you just had the May Day demonstrations, but no one's threatening the American political architecture, its structures, its institutions. They're very solid. The Supreme Court, the police system, the rule of law, all of those things. Furthermore, if you think about where people want to go and where money wants to go, it's safe havens. The dollar does well in a G0 environment. Other things the U.S. has going for it, it's a large economy, of course. The demographics are strong, which means it has the ability to grow simply from endogenous factors. And then, of course, you have the fact that if you look at game-changing new technologies like unconventional oil and gas, biotech, nanotech, those are overwhelmingly dominated by American universities, the American government and American multinational corporations. It's not China, it's not Russia, and it's only to a small degree other developed areas of the world. So if you need to make a bet, look, you might want to bet on America 20 years ago as opposed to America today, but that's not a portfolio available to any of CNN Money's viewers. If you need to make a bet today, you're betting on the United States or someplace else. You can do a little gold, you can do a little hard commodities, but if you're looking at other countries of scale, it's the United States.